It's Bouncy here. What do these clowns and this ringmaster have to do with Walt Disney and his employees? Let's honk around and find out. You see, in the late 30s and early 40s, things were really booming at Disney. They had a lot of great success with Snow White, Fantasia, and after that, Pinocchio. Animation was really taking off, and with anything that's popular, it demands a lot of labor and time. Animators who worked on popular animations were unionizing to get steady wages, and most studios complied with this. But Disney did not, and it was the most popular studio, but wages just weren't steady. It really wasn't fair a lot of the time to the hardworking, underpaid, and overworked animators that weren't considered the star animators. The people that really pushed cartoons into completion weren't making nearly enough for their time and effort. It should be mentioned that Walt Disney didn't see the problem with this. He believed that he owned the company and he could make any and all decisions about what people were paid, so they should just be more grateful because he gave them a studio to work in. Unfortunately, he was very famously and openly anti-union. As tensions began to rise with the payment issues in the studio, Herbert Sorrell, an American labor leader, and Arthur Babbitt, one of Disney's most successful animators, got together with Bill Littlejohn, who was the first president of the Screen Cartoonists Guild, and they approached Walt and asked him to unionize, but when they did, he said no. So they went along with their plan to strike, and on May 29, 1941, more than 200 members of the studio went on to strike, but this was also during the production of the 1941 movie Dumbo. The animators were not shy about opposing Walt Disney, who was seen as a tyrant and unfair businessman, so it didn't make him look very good when, in order to retaliate against his workers, he had the remaining animators draw caricatures of them as clowns in Dumbo, and added a scene of the clowns asking for a raise.
Hey, let's hit him for a raise.
Yeah, sure. This is White Real Doll. Oh, we're gonna hit the big buck for a raise.
Yes, we're going to hit the big boss for a raise.
Since Walt decided to treat the animators like clowns, they decided to bring the circus to the picketing line, using their art skills and humor to oppose Walt. A fight was even broken up between Babbitt and Walt, and they both openly disliked each other. But back to the clowns. By insulting his striking workers and making them into clowns, Walt inadvertently likened himself to the ringmaster in the film. So now, a character who was seen as a villain, a pompous showman, and a narcissist was associated with Walt. He was a character with a bad mustache, who even a very small mouse did not like. The animators truly got the last laugh. Not long after, it was ordered that Walt had to comply with the American standards of fair treatment and labor. You see, Walt was a goodwill ambassador, and as such, he was expected to behave well or else lose this title. So he did eventually comply, only because it made him look good to have this title, and an agreement was made. So they reinstated the employees that worked at the studio, including Babbitt and everyone else, and they all went back to work on Dumbo with a better, more stable pay. But only because Walt Disney just wanted to look like a good guy. Kind of funny that that's what it took in the end, was just kind of some loophole. Not really the feelings of his animators, but just because he had to keep his status. So what we can take away from all this is that Dumbo is basically a time capsule of a different era when animators were striking and really standing up for themselves. It's also a story about how a big-time animator, Babbitt, that did not like Walt, stood up for the little guy for a change, and it actually paid off. Then, 40 plus years later, in the 1988 movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, a cherished film full of all kinds of nods to animation's past, we find this scene. Maybe you can figure out what it's about without me pointing it out.
Kinda jumpy, aren't you, Valiant? It's just Dumbo.
I know who it is.
I got him on loan from Disney. Him and half the cast of Fantasia. The best part is, they work for peanuts.
At first, the joke itself is just a joke about elephants liking peanuts, but considering it's Dumbo and what happened in 1941, and just how many well-placed and well-thought-out Easter eggs there are about animation in this film, well, that's exactly what Walt was doing to his employees. paying them peanuts during Dumbo, and they worked on Fantasia before that, so it's funny that Fantasia is mentioned right after this joke. It's kind of an Easter egg, if you know what you're looking for and the history behind it. I've actually never really seen it mentioned before, but I think it's just one of those, if you know things. I don't even really know if people were supposed to catch it. Also, as a bit of a clown nerd, I've always loved how Eddie Valiant and his brother from Valiant and Valiant were both clowns, and I just think that's neat because it places this really cool bridge between animation and clowning. A video for another time, truly. It should also be mentioned that there is a bit of a debate about who this clown is. Some people think that it's just a colored version of Coco, even though Coco doesn't have hair, and others say it's one of the clowns from Dumbo. What do you think? Did you know that the clowns from Dumbo were also in the 1999 video game for Windows and Mac, Disney Villains Revenge? You basically have to ruin their stunt and humiliate them in order to save Dumbo and his mom, and then later they reappear in the final boss battle as the ringmaster's minions attacking the player. Then later on, there's a clown named Bumpy, who is also the main character of the Dumbo minigame that gets unlocked after the main game. But this game actually canonically gave a name to at least one of the clowns. Now that we know he's called Bumpy, well, at least we know one of their names. Speaking of clowns, the ringmaster was voiced by an actual clown, Herman Bing, who really did do circus clown work in real life. And Billy Bletcher, a famous voice actor with a baritone voice, did a lot of the different voices for the clowns in Dumbo. In spite of such a famous deep voice, he was actually trained in clowning and prior to voice acting was a silent film star. I should also mention there's a live-action version of Dumbo where the clown looked like this. Well, that's really all for this video, but I just wanted to make the comment, you can't run a circus without your clowns, so don't pay them peanuts. Bouncing away now, bye-bye!